This is the end of side 1. Please turn over the tape at this point to continue with side 2.
A person exposed to the sun's ultraviolet rays at the equator in summer would have no slightest concern that the intensity of the stress would be high enough to threaten the physiology sufficiently as to cause an adaptive response, a suntan. While the imposition of a high-intensity sunlight stress is the primary causal determinant, or first necessary cause, it would not be sufficient cause to affect the development of an optimal suntan. The suntanner's primary concern, his overriding consideration, would be related to secondary and tertiary causes, the proper regulation of the volume and frequency of the exposure time so as not to overdose on the stress stimulus and incur a sunburn or, in extreme cases, death. A person exposed to high-intensity sunlight stress does not fret as to whether he'll succeed in achieving his goal, an optimal suntan, but only so long as he doesn't overexpose. Bodybuilders utilizing the blind, non-theoretical volume approach to training do fret continuously over the prospect of ever developing their muscles because they know absolutely nothing about the nature of the causes required to affect the development of muscles beyond normal levels. They are completely ignorant of the first cause required by nature, training to failure to stimulate the body's growth mechanism into motion, and they remain solely concerned with volume and frequency. Unlike the suntanner, however, who is rationally concerned with the proper regulation of the exposure of the sunlight stress, the bodybuilder has an irrational obsession with overimposing the training stress. The theory of suntanning, by the way, is essentially the same as the theory of muscle building, both of which derive from the theory of stress physiology. Recently, one of my phone clients expressed considerable astonishment that he was able to make so much uninterrupted progress with heavy-duty, high-intensity training, and I explained to him that such should not be a surprise, that there's no mystery to any of this, that people have been growing larger muscles for thousands of years, that we live in a knowable, rational universe of absolute, clear-cut identity, guided by one set of never-changing principles, and that the cause-effect relationship between intense exercise and muscle growth has been understood for quite some time, even though the vast majority of self-styled experts here don't seem to grasp it. I concluded by explaining to this individual that it is reality and its laws, the laws of nature, that dictate what causes must be enacted to affect the buildup of muscle mass beyond normal levels, and that once these causes are understood, the task of building bigger muscles, while requiring high-intensity effort, is actually rather simple. With a proper understanding of the law of causality, bodybuilding progress should be, will be immediate, continuous, and nothing short of spectacular through to the full actualization of one's muscular potential in 1 year or less. That's right. It is possible to actualize your full muscular potential in 1 year or less. While anyone should be able to actualize his muscular potential in 1 year, no one can guarantee exactly what his potential is, as the prime determinant of bodybuilding success is genetics. And although the subject of genetics, or inherited characteristics, is widely recognized as of central importance in bodybuilding and athletics, it is rarely understood. Individuals inherit characteristics peculiar to their parents and not common to the species, examples of which are height, eye color, blood type, and body type. These are referred to as fixed genetics traits, and thus not typically subject to alteration from exogenous influences. There do exist other inherited traits, however, such as intelligence and muscle size, that are not absolutely fixed and can be progressively altered, although within a genetically prescribed range. Along with specific psychological motivational factors that the individual must possess or acquire in order to achieve his goals, genetic endowment is the primary factor determining both the rate of response to intense exercise and the degree of muscular development. So, while anyone can improve upon his level of muscular development with proper training and nutrition, only a small percentage will possess the requisite genetic traits to become champions. The most visible of the physical characteristics necessary for the development of a top physique is related to the skeletal structure. The formation of the bones dictates not only how much muscle can be supported, they also determine a significant aspect of the aesthetic quality of the physique. Though the size of the skeleton figures in how much muscle can be supported, the actual size potential of a muscle is determined to a significant extent by its length. Skeletal considerations and muscle belly length, however, are only two inherited characteristics which affect physique potential, and were discussed briefly here merely to introduce the listener to the subject. There are numerous others, including muscle fiber density and recovery ability, an elaboration of which is beyond the scope of this work. For those interested in more information on the role of genetics, I suggest you refer to my book, Heavy Duty 1. I am often amazed by the Sisyphean efforts of bodybuilders who are willing to train for hours a day, every day for months and years, with literally little or nothing to show for their efforts. It is almost as if they're waiting for a zap out of the mystical realm of whims, wishes, and hopes to one day deliver them their much-dreamed-of muscles. If you are such an individual, wake up and stop wasting your time. If your present program hasn't been yielding progress for weeks, let alone months or years, it isn't going to start doing so tomorrow. Presumably your life is sacred, and the achievement of your goals is of great value significance. It is important, having set a goal, that you successfully achieve it, as the implications to your confidence, happiness, and self-esteem are crucial. With a properly conducted, heavy-duty, high-intensity training program, you will grow stronger and larger literally every workout, until you reach the upper limits of your muscular potential. Yes, as I've already stated, in 1 year or less. Given your present state of knowledge, such may seem impossible. But remember, it wasn't all that long ago that the great American unwashed thought we'd never get to the moon. Impossible, they said. Of course, without any knowledge of the scientific principles of cosmology or astrophysics, reaching the moon might seem like an insurmountable task. And without the knowledge of the scientific principles of high-intensity anaerobic exercise stress physiology, yes, the idea that you could actualize your muscular potential in 1 year or less would seem impossible. Let me remind you that man has not only been to the moon, but he has gone and returned safely many times. Sending a man to the moon is an enormously complex task or goal, requiring the application of theoretical knowledge from a constellation of intellectual disciplines, including mathematics, physics, medicine, biology, physiology, electronics, engineering, computer technology, to name a few. If we can send a man to the moon and return him safely every time, we should be able to succeed with every one of our missions to the gym here on Earth. In fact, it should be a cakewalk compared to a moonwalk. Another reason, in addition to my logical identifications of the facts of reality, why I'm able to communicate on a meaningful level with bodybuilders is quite simply because I am a bodybuilder myself. Many of the hopes, dreams, doubts, and fears you may have experienced as a bodybuilder, I've experienced too. So, while it is true that we are all unique as individuals, each in possession of an unrepeatable, irreplaceable personality, it is also true that as human beings we share many things. This brings to mind another statement from Arthur Jones, the man who taught me not only much of considerable value about the nature of exercise, but also about thinking in human beings. On the subject of shared experiences and issues, Mr. Jones said, "Mike, if you want to understand others, merely look inside of yourself." Mr. Jones's concept has served me very well over the years as a type of orienting principle with regard to my writing. When searching for a subject or issue to serve as a topic for an article, I would merely invoke Jones's dictum and ask myself, okay, look inside of yourself with regards to this matter, identify and isolate what you find most relevant, interesting, and exciting as both a bodybuilder and a human being, and others will find it likewise. Those shared matters are referred to philosophically as fundamental issues. A fundamental issue, dear listener, is one that pertains to all members of the species, an inescapable part of human existence. Examples of fundamental issues are, is the world knowable, or is it mysterious and unknowable? Are reason and logic man's sole means of gaining knowledge, or are emotions superior means of cognition? Is man a rational, efficacious being, capable of success and happiness, or is he a congenital incompetent, doomed to perpetual doubt and despair? Is the struggle to gain knowledge and learn how to think for myself worth it, or is obeying and pleasing others more important? Should I passively accept the dominant culture's values, or should I look outside the culture to the grand-scale context of the history of ideas for something better? Whether one should work to develop a more muscular body is not fundamental, for the issue does not inevitably arise in the course of a normal human life. What is fundamental is whether it is proper to strive for goals at all. And as a title winner, I'd be the last to suggest that developing a more muscular physique is not a worthy goal. A muscular physique, however, is not a viable substitute for a mature mind. That is, a mind with a conceptual grasp and intellectual understanding of the fundamental issues of human life. While you are free, dear listener, to evade the effort and responsibility required to learn how to think and judge independently, and thus deal successfully with that which is of most fundamental importance in human life, you are not free to evade the consequences. No, big muscles do not confer a halo onto your crown or provide one with intellectual confidence and self-esteem. I have known a number of top bodybuilders, men of extraordinary muscular development, who suffered from profound lack of self-esteem, who, despite all their trophies and the public adulation, were riddled with self-doubt and beset by psychological conflicts they had no slightest clue how to resolve. None of this was the result of a deficient or malfunctioning brain. No, they were intellectually self-arrested. Each had apparently decided at an early age that he had learned enough. One of them was a bodybuilder of the absolute first rank, who, despite being well known for his massive development, was plagued by chronic doubt as how to proceed with his training, and marred by a number of serious character flaws. While training at Gold's Gym, where I conducted my personal training business, this individual befriended one of my clients, a rank beginner with no muscle to speak of. I was surprised to learn later that the heavily muscled champ had called my client on a number of occasions, once at 3 in the morning, to ask if there was really any merit to this heavy-duty, high-intensity training, and whether or not he should forsake the volume approach and give it a try. Many make the unwarranted assumption that the top bodybuilding champs must be experts on the subject of exercise. After all, they have the muscles. It is a mistake, however. One cannot cite the apparent success of a couple of dozen of top bodybuilders as indubitable proof that a certain training approach is effective or superior. If one were to look back through the course of their training careers and calculate the hours, months, and even years of wasted effort, time during which they made no progress, one would have to question whether their achievement could properly be termed success at all. You'd conclude by scratching your head and wondering, didn't these men have anything better to do with their time? And many apparently did not. The champ mentioned above, for instance, never gave much time to thinking about his moral character and his development. I can clearly recall a couple of instances in Gold's Gym where this imposing giant of muscle used his greater size to intimidate others of lesser physical stature, once because a person accidentally got in his way while walking to the water fountain for a drink between sets.